Your thoughts can be programmed. Your emotions can be manipulated. But there is something inside of you that others will never be able to control. And when you live by this inner truth, by this sacred space within, not only do you achieve your highest destiny, but you also live in such a way that they can never control you again. By the end of this night, you will come to know exactly what I'm talking about. Because human civilization at this time is bound up with this issue of control. It's not just governments, but it's them too. It's also the individuals who live by a common fear, a deep sense that if they cannot contain and predict what is going to happen next, then their entire world could fall into chaos. I'm not just talking about the powers that be, but I'm talking about them too. I'm not just talking about a corporate boss, but I'm talking about them too. I'm also talking about those individuals in our lives who believe that if they can just get us to behave in a way that they prefer, then somehow they can feel safe. A world based on control, based on a need to contain forces that seem chaotic, too often turns into a world of domination. And we can see this pattern play out on the big scale and on the small scale, collectively and individually. The problem with this kind of control and domination is that it means that we never get to actually live our purpose. We never actually get to abide in God's will. Of course, when I say God, I'm talking about not a guy in the sky, but a basic basis of reality, the very fabric of existence. I'm talking about what is common, what is natural to us. We never get to explore that, which means we never get to bring the deep value that we were designed to bring to the world because somebody else has a different agenda. I often do not like going into history on this channel, but sometimes you just got to. And so tonight we'll be jumping in quickly through some explorations of human control, what it means for a human to say, okay, I want to dominate this person, and how that control shows up in the way in which people try and manipulate your thinking, manipulate your emotions, so that they can ultimately manipulate your behaviors. By the end of tonight, I want you to stay and watch this live. Because by the end of tonight, they will never control you again. With that said, if you're ready to live free beyond fear, welcome here. I'm Dr. Shawn, and I believe you do not need years to heal. You just need one real breakthrough. That's why I invented Transcendent Psychology, and I test it in the real world on real people on my game show, Countdown to Breakthrough, the only game show that heals your soul. Right now, you're on the Breakthrough Live, where we break down the science of healing so that you can get your own breakthrough live. On tonight's show, I've got so much show for you. I almost have to give some back. I've got so much show for you. I'm like, man, where do we start? Because at a point we have to start talking about the very level of consciousness that humanity is currently vibrating at, how that current level has created systems of near domination, near total control over your thinking, over your emotions, over your behavior. There's three institutions typically in any society that are designed to control and govern behavior. We'll get into some of those. But ultimately, at the end of tonight, it's just not about merely bucking the system. It's not about just being resistant just to be resistant. It's about transforming ourselves that we might transform our world. See, that's the sacred responsibility here. You might even call it our spiritual responsibility. That what we are doing is transforming ourselves and then watching as the world responds. Let me take a moment to welcome people into the chat. Twin, I see you saying good evening, Dr. Shawn. Good evening. I see you. I see you. Twin, welcome. All good evening. And if we don't speak too soon, good morning, good afternoon, and have a good night. You said have a good night. Is that what I'm getting from you, Twin? Both the twins are in the chat right now. Welcome in. Folks, there's one thing that's been on my mind as of late. And I always think about how much history to kind of bring to the channel. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what are we really doing here? And I simply cannot get past what I keep seeing cycling over and over and over again. Real quick, I take you back to 2,500 years ago. The place is Sparta of Greece. The year is 405 BC. We are at the end of the Second Peloponnesian War. And what we're seeing in Sparta, if you remember Sparta, Sparta is like the movie 300, if you ever saw that, that was about the Spartans. They were fighting the Persians in that movie. What's so interesting is that Sparta itself, at this particular time and throughout its history, it depended on, it was able to be such a warrior-like society or a military-like society, but that military society depended on something underneath it. It depended on a system of slavery, the enslavement of other Greeks. So the Spartans would go and they would conquer other, territories in the surrounding Sparta, and they would turn those people into slaves, or what they called helots, Helots. Now, eventually, the helots are doing all of the hard labor, which gives the Spartans time to go and build military men. You understand? But what's so fascinating, and how it ties into our conversation tonight, is the system of control the Spartans had to use in order to keep the helots in check. Don't you know that eventually the helots, remember the helots are the slaves of their society, the people forced into slavery. Don't you know that eventually there were so many conquered people, so many Greeks? This is an era before race. So this is not like, oh man, we gotta, it's light skin, dark skin, we gotta go enslave the people who are darker skinned. This is not, it's people who look like each other to our common eyes, enslaving each other. So this is predates the era of slavery that we're taught in the West, or that we're taught about typically in the West, the transatlantic slave trade. But what's so interesting is that eventually the Helots outnumbered the Spartans 10 to 1. The Spartans are understanding that these Helots, there's more of them than there are of us. How can we control them? And wouldn't you know that the system of control, when I say it's going to look kind of familiar. So here's what they would do. Every year they would have an open season where they would go and actually attack helots who were either too ambitious, too resistant, too militant. They would go and attack them, kill them on the streets. I just want you to understand how people, the level of consciousness that humanity has been vibrating at over the last 10,000 years is such that people will use violence in order to send a message to the group that the violence was perpetrated on. If this isn't ringing any bells just yet, don't worry. What else would they do? Well, they would also create a pathway to freedom for the helots, not citizenship. They said you can't be a citizen, you can never be a Spartan, but you can at least be free. So how about this? Join our military, come fight for us, ascend the ranks, and you can at least get your freedom. You can at least stop being a helot, which means that you can go back home and you can stunt on all the people who are still helots. All the people who are still broke, oh yeah, you can go stunt on them. Talk about how look how free you are. And so what's that mean? Once you create a buffer class, once you create a group of people who are also in a certain type of bondage, but you create just a little opportunity for them to get a little bit of freedom. People, those helots will actually, or former helots, the people who are now newly free will actually fight and defend that system. They'll defend the Spartan system because they now see their freedom as tied with it. You see how that works? They now see their own personal freedom as now tied with the system that put them in bondage in the first place, and so they don't want it to go away. It's like a weird version of Stockholm syndrome. This is how people, not only what I'm pointing out for you, the reason I'm bringing this story up is not because I care about pointing fingers at somebody, but because we're getting a sense for not only how control is administered, but also how it's accepted. You dig what I'm saying? What are the three institutions? Somebody in the chat put for me, I'm just going to say it if you don't say it, but what are the three institutions that societies across the Greeks, the Romans, and modern societies, what are the three institutions that people use in order to control the thinking and the emotions and therefore the behavior of its citizenry or of its subjects, depending on the style of government? Those three elements, this is so important. This is so important. Let me give y'all just a second here. Let me give y'all just a second here to answer that right quick. Just because I'm just so curious. Like what y'all think? What y'all think? The three things that you yourself were put through. Watch this, that you yourself were put through. I'm talking about Sparta 2,500 years ago. What's that got to do with today? Because these three institutions are the same ones that you yourself were put through in order that your emotions be directed toward a particular line of influence. That your thinking be directed toward a particular line of influence. That your behaviors be directed toward a particular avenue rather than another. I'm giving you the game from Sparta because Sparta, they won the Peloponnesian War, but then they end up just getting crushed by Thebes to the north. And then after that, Persia, the people that actually they were fighting with in the beginning, they end up conquering these folks, all of them again. And then Alexander the Great comes and conquers Persia in the name of Sparta. He's like, oh, yeah, I saw what y'all did to the homies. And then he comes and conquers Persia. Of course, the Greeks then get conquered by the Romans. The Romans set up Britannia. Britannia is Britain. Britain becomes, splits off. Little Revolutionary War. Voila, we got the United States. You dig what I'm saying? That's where I happen to have grown up. And so what I'm saying is that I'm drawing a historical lineage, a genealogy, a pattern of control that has stretched back millennia. I think the average person says, "Oh, well, it's always been the case." Let's not do that. Let's not do that. I don't want to say what's always been the case. I can only tell you what has been the case based on a few cases that happen to be so salient to modern life that we would be foolish to overlook them, even in our spiritual quest. On this channel, we don't really do too much of the politics stuff because at the end of the day, we have to transform people in order to transform anything else. So I typically don't go back this far, but I want to know these three institutions real quick. What we got for me? What we got? Okay, cool. So if you're saying schools, yes, that's one. If you're saying religion, yes, that's the other. In fact, schools and religion often go together, right? If you ever wonder why we have caps and gowns at graduations, it's because that comes out of the priesthood, right? The schools, the priesthood, that all used to be one unit. So that even with the separation of church and state, the gown stayed, paying homage to that early religious foundation. So we got schools, we got religion, schools controlling what a person is thinking, and therefore controlling where their emotions are directed, what ideas their emotions they're emotionally invested in, and therefore what behaviors they are likely to take, giving people a scope and a range of behaviors. That's number one. Religions controlling what people are thinking. What is your paradigm of reality? What is your cosmology? Every single human being, even if they're atheist, has a religion. It is your worldview, your idea of how things operate, how things work. These definitely control your thinking. They are the thinking. Therefore, they control and proctor, facilitate your emotions and facilitate your behaviors as a result of that. Okay. So we have schools, religion. The third one is, for the Greeks, the third one was theater. Today, we would just call it media, TV, books, movie theaters, movies, internet content, anything that you can watch on a screen. These are the three institutions that work together in order to influence the very way that you think and feel, and therefore behave. We want to know that. We want to know that because when we're talking about Sparta, it's so interesting because just jumping back, these folks, they never had to worry about a revolt. You say, okay, well, the Helots, They outnumber the Spartans 10 to 1. How come they didn't just like, say we don't want to do any of this stuff anymore? Well, it's because the systems of control that were implemented, the helots that were basically killed for being too ambitious or being too resistant or rebellious, that spread around the town. That was their version of like the newspaper. Like it was super mediatized. Everyone found out about it very quickly, right? Because everyone's telling stories about this type of thing. The Spartans themselves are being trained in schools on how to see these other people as young boys. They're learning to see these people as less than human. You dig what I'm saying? So the point of this conversation is to get us to a place where we say, okay, I can recognize that there is a need for control. Because again, the Greeks were conquered by the Romans and they just took it up a level. They just took it to a whole other level. That's a whole other conversation for a whole other day, but they just took it to a whole other level. And then Britain took it up a little bit, and then the US took it up even further. So what we're dealing with is we go to the Spartans and we say, okay, well, how come why didn't the Helots rebel? Well, the Helots didn't rebel because they were controlled. Their thinking was controlled, their emotions were controlled, their behaviors were controlled. And all it took was just putting a few pieces into place. And that those few pieces all they equate to one real thing, one real substance that kept the Helots in control. And that's fear. Fear was the thing that kept the Helots in control, under control rather. Kept their thinking, kept their emotions, their behaviors stacked. They never did revolt. What ended up happening is that with the help of Persia, Sparta defeats Athens, which is just a neighboring Greek city. And then again, Thebes to the north comes through and wipes out Sparta when the Persians say, you know what, we actually don't need to help you guys out anymore. We like helping the weaker people. We don't like helping people who could be a threat to us. So y'all on your own for this second war, or this third war rather. But what does Thebes do? Thebes comes through and starts freeing the Helots. Fascinating. Look, I'm getting so into this because it's like, oh my gosh, okay, I can see the parallels. Once I can understand the history of something, I can see how human behavior has operated across time, across generations. And I can also see how the same playbook gets ran today. But my thing is this, I'm interested in two functions here. Why did the Spartans, why was it so cool to create, why did they feel the need to bring this level of domination to these other folks? It's my conjecture that they were afraid that if they did not, then the drama would be brought to them. Either way, it's fear. Fear to control, and fear allows you to be controlled. So our conversation tonight must take us beyond fear. It must take us to a place where fear can't go. And that's what I want to do right now. That's what I want to do right now. Okay, Felicity's saying religion. Felicity saying good evening, all excellent, excellent. Okay, Twin saying that's crazy hearing this. I call I call my Audi A8 Spartan, and that's literally how I feel when I drive around freedom. But more than that, you okay? Yeah, I mean, yeah, right. Like the way that these societies get glorified by our own society tells us something, right? That in and of itself is like, okay, oh, you know what I'm saying? Like, look, I like the movie 300 too. You know what I'm saying? Like, it did inspire me to do some push-ups. That's the movie where everybody was cut. You got to. I mean, it's still, pretty action packed. But why do we like we're big up? We want to make sure we tell the whole story. In fact, if I feel like we're doing a disservice if we don't tell the whole story. Because how can we learn from anything that has happened if we're not willing to face what that is? And oh, by the way, this is I got to say this. Okay, so the Helots, the reason that Sparta was able to be defeated by Thebes is precisely because they wanted to maintain such tight control over the Helots. So Sparta has to go get the movie 300 is about Sparta fighting Persia, right? King Xerxes. You dig what I'm saying? So, but that movie takes place about 100 years before this 405 BC, before the end of the Second Peloponnesian War. Okay, so which means that the Spartans they eventually had to team up with the Persians in order to deal with the Athenians. Why did they have to go to the Persians? It's because they wanted to make sure they maintained control over the Helots. They could have just freed the Helots and been like, hey, look, why don't you guys fight for us and then you all can get integrated in society and we can figure out a whole other thing. They ain't trying to do all that. They were like, listen, we got to keep them in check. We'll go and do business with our enemy in order that we can win this war against the Athenians. And they did win that war. But the problem is that Sparta could not produce enough warriors quick enough because you had to be 100% thoroughbred in order to be considered a Spartan in the first place. In other words, they were so busy trying to build their slave population that they forgot to build their military. And the Greeks to the north just took advantage of that. And then Persia came and conquered them. You dig what I'm saying? And so this is it's not in the sense that I want to just be talking about a history of conquering. It's a in the sense that I want to be able to understand human behavior at scale. And scale meaning across time, and scale meaning across numbers. Because if we can see these large patterns, then our entire work in transcendent psychology is to locate those macro patterns within inside of us. And so what I'm saying is that those macro patterns, they really get distilled down to one core trait, the capacity for fear. I'm not talking about fear that responds to danger. I'm talking about the fear that responds to uncertainty. When people just don't know what to do, they start getting afraid. When they start getting afraid, they start looking for avenues to create a more predictable situation. And wherein a person is the most unpredictable of any other natural phenomenon in the environment, from the perspective of most humans, to control other people becomes a proxy for controlling fear itself. You must understand this. That controlling other people becomes a proxy for controlling fear itself. These people are really just trying to address something internally. Yes, they have external goals, but the fear keeps them from actually accessing the sorts of ideas that would allow them to navigate their world in higher vibrational ways. Sparta could have literally said, look, you know what? We're a democracy now. We're a democracy and a non-slave democracy. We're about to free the Helots. They didn't even consider. They weren't even thinking about that. They were like, look, we got to make sure we keep them in check. We're willing to do business with our sworn enemy. They done killed the 300, but hey, we got to go do it. because we just cannot take the chance that these folks over here are going to forgive us for what we've done. So now we gotta, hey, let's figure something out. And Sparta fell for that. Not because the Helots rose up and did the thing and nah, but because they had a system where they were constantly looking to control rather than grow, they themselves were conquered. It's the one trait that the great empires, or when I say great, I mean like the big empires. It's the one trait that they all have. They have this massive internal level of fear. And so what we're talking about is getting beyond the ability for others to control you based on getting beyond fear itself. Because what would happen if the Helots just said, you know what, actually, I'm not doing any of this work. I'm just not. What happens is that they probably would be killed or have to be in some sort of fight or whatever the case is. But Sparta would have never been able to develop its civilization in that way. Not in that way. It wouldn't have made any sense. And so the fire that ended up burning so many people the fire that ended up burning so many people, burning their purpose away, forcing them into labor that somebody else was dictating. That fire just would have never got lit. And so, folks, it's a long opening. It's a big opening for today. You know what I'm saying? We're kind of long on it, but I just wanted to articulate that point really quickly because now what I want to do is get into a clip of Countdown to Breakthrough. And ultimately, what I'm saying here is that the way out of fear, as you likely know, if you've been tuning in, is to return to this God essence, to return to this inner quality that I call love. But really, what I'm talking about is the felt sense of oneness, the understanding of fundamental reality. The other way of saying that is to return to clear seeing. And so let me get to my piece here. All of me and see how capable I am.
Yes.
Okay, and if you're and because in this moment when you say that, slow it down, that makes it seem like you don't think I can do all of this.
Yeah.
And that's when it hits me. Remember how light doesn't know time? Light does not carry the baggage of the past or worry about the future. It simply is. And that's just like love. 1 John reminds us that God is light. But John 4:16 also tells us that God is love, which means that light and love must be one, in and out of time, both eternal. If I can get these strangers to focus on the light of love within, could I help them transcend time and bypass their own insecurities so that they can focus on only what is now? Okay, so the point of that clip is to get us to an understanding of the eternal nature of the God frequency, the eternal nature of love itself. The reason for that is that we need to talk about principles. We need to be able to reason from principle. And so, when we're talking about control, let's go to the breakthrough board. Let's go to the breakthrough board. When we're talking about control, there's a principle that is key, that is core. Whether we're talking about top down, macro, big scale control, or if we're just talking about the sort of control that happens when you're in a relationship with somebody and they want you to be the way they prefer. They want you to do the things that they prefer. They want you to live the way that they prefer. They're saying essentially to you that, hey, listen, my preference for your life is more important than God's preference for your life. They're basically saying to you that my preference for your life is better than what you were born for, better than what nature can offer. God, nature, reality, I use all the terms interchangeably. I'm talking about the same thing. And so when we explore tonight's principle, the principle is this. When it comes to getting beyond control of others, getting to a place where other people can no longer control you, even if they have dominion over entire school systems, religions, media systems, it doesn't matter. Getting to a place where other people cannot control you, we need to abide by a single principle. What is that principle? So I can get you here. The principle is this. Love cannot be controlled because love is the energy of the whole. You dig that? Love cannot be controlled because love is the energy of the whole. Love is the energy of God itself, which would mean that in order to control a person, there must be some sort of reason for controlling them, which means there must be some version of fear, which means there must be some version of separation. So here's the deal. Our principle is this. Love cannot be controlled. Make sure I get over here. Make sure I get out of the light. There we go. Ugh. Love cannot be controlled because love is the energy of the whole. There is no fissure, no separation in love. No place where someone can break apart and turn love in on itself. When I say love, I'm talking about the energy of all of reality. That's how important this is. I'm not talking about some emotion. I'm not talking about some fleeting enjoyment. I'm not talking about a passion, something that you like today and don't like tomorrow. I'm talking about that sacred energy that you can feel. That's why I call it love, because when I say it, whatever your definition is, the truth is in there. So, love is the energy of the whole. All right. So, that's our principle for the evening. What's the pattern? See, the reality is that once you can understand patterns, you can understand how ideas, how phenomena, how events change over time. They become predictable. And what's predictable is controllable. So we want to understand that if our principle is that love cannot be controlled, that space within, that love cannot be controlled because it is the energy of the whole. Love is constantly acting on behalf of the entire cosmos. It is operationalizing for total reality, not just for one person, one group, one situation. Nah, it'll take care of the person, the group, the situation as well. But it's going to do it in connection and coordination with the greater forces of the cosmos. And it's going to do it in connection with the greater forces of the benefit that are for the benefit of other organisms. That's what it means for it to be connected through the whole. So if we understand that that's our principle, what's our pattern? Our pattern is this. All control is meant to fragment your thinking. It is meant to bifurcate, trifurcate, and quadrifurcate. It's meant to cut into and dissect into pieces the myriad expression, the total expression that is otherwise love, that is otherwise nature itself. So it's meant to get you to focus on just one little sliver of reality and forget the rest. Which means that if I can get you to focus on just this line of thinking right here, then I can make this other line of thinking down here your enemy. I'll make this one you, and I'll make this one your enemy. And once you believe this, once you believe that this is true, it becomes very apparent how you will behave. And if you do not behave in the way that the one who has cut your thinking up into pieces, who has cut your focus up into pieces, taking your focus off of God and put it onto this enemy. If you do not abide by the rules, well, that's when people get punished. That's when people get punished until they are forced to either see themselves as the person who must go and commit violence against an enemy, or until they become the actual enemy itself. This is how it works. All control requires this split in thinking. And truly, you don't even need all these pieces. You just need two. You just need something that is you and something that is not you. Once someone can convince you of that, and they can define these terms for you, it's a wrap. Because your emotions will follow your thinking, and your behaviors will follow your emotions. That's the pattern. That's the pattern. Let me know if you're understanding. Put a yes in the chat. That's the pattern. All we need is just 1 and 2. And if we can add all different types of dimensions inside of it, that's even more perfect. But all we really need is just the 2. We call this, in academic literature, this is called uh, binary opposition. You could just call it duality, but it's called binary opposition when we split a person's thinking into 2, take it off of the totality of reality, which is to say, take it off of love and put it on to some other schemata, to some other definition. This is how this goes. And systems of control are simply setting up systems of reward and punishment based on how well your thinking follows this binary opposition. Follow it well, you get rewarded. Don't follow it well, you get punished. Follow it well, you get to be in the in group. Don't follow it well, you get to be in the out group, even if you were formerly in the in group. You understand? So, this is how a military operation decides that it wants to commandeer a new society and control it, bring its people underneath their control. In order to even want to do this, you've got to be thinking in terms of binary opposition, which means fear already needs to have taken root in your heart. And by fear, I mean you need to have already separated yourself out from the totality of reality. Okay, so that is our pattern. That is our pattern. Okay, Twin is saying, wow, I think Dante's Inferno. Say more. Say more. I want to know what you're talking about there. I want to know what you're talking about there. Because as we move through and we've got our principle, which is that love cannot be controlled because love is the energy of the whole. But then we've got this pattern, which is that all control is based on conditioning your thinking, based on getting you to think in terms of binary opposition, to get you to see the world in a certain way, a world that is separate from the totality of reality. Remember, the totality of reality is just another way to say, it's just another way to say love. And so we've talked about the principle. Again, I've told you about the pattern. The pattern's important. I've just shown you what the pattern is. Patterns are critical because you're going to want to be able to identify those wherever you see them so that you understand exactly what's going on. Now we need to talk about the path forward. We've talked about the principle, we've talked about the path. I'm sorry, we talked about the principle, we talked about the pattern. Now we need to talk about the path forward. What is that thing? Hmm. Hmm. You know that folks want to because they are afraid and have a level of institutional authority. People got militaries behind them. So you know that people are interested in controlling others because they secretly want to just control the fear that they have about others. They want to control others because they secretly are in fear of others. So what's the path forward? I mean, what do you do? Well, hmm, let's pretend this is you. And here is that totality of reality. This is you, and this is that totality of reality. We also call it love. You're going to need you're going to need to act from this unconditioned energy of love. You're going to need to act from this unconditioned energy of the whole. That's what this is. This is supposed to be you. All right. And this is the energy of the totality of reality. This is the energy of the whole. You're going to need to tap into that and allow it to guide your steps, allow it to make your decisions. Can you learn to take every decision that you're going to make in a single day and hold it up to the light of love? Let me show you something. I might be able to do this right here on my computer. I might be able to show you. You know, I've been writing that book, right? And so let me see. I was about to write it up on the board. Yeah, well, I should probably do that too. Let me do that. Let me do that real quick. Let me use the breakthrough board. You say, what do you mean? When I ask you, can you hold up every decision that you need to make up to the light of love? Can you make it so that what you do is love, how you do it is love, when you do it is love, where you do it is love, who you do it with is love, and why you do it is love? I call this right here, this right here is called the love hexagon. Once you can abide, once you've advanced yourself to the place where you can feel the deep fabric of reality, you can feel that oneness, that integrated connection with all things. If you can't do that yet, don't worry, we'll get there. Can you hold every single decision you have to make in a single day up to the light of love? That means you're saying, hey, listen, is this activity what I would love to do? Better be. Is it how I would love to do it? Better be. Is it when I would love to do it? Where? With who and why for reasons that I love? It better be. The answer must always be yes. If the answer is yes, then guess what? You are now walking in true purpose. You are now abiding in the energy of the totality of reality. You are now choosing love. And so the idea here is that once you can connect here, I call it the love hexagon. It's a simple tool. It's in the book, of course. Once the book comes out, I don't know when that's going to happen, but the idea is that love cannot itself be controlled because it is operating on behalf of the whole. It's not for somebody. You cannot choose what you love. You ever notice that? You can get acquired taste. You can like certain things because you saw it growing up or whatever the case is. But when it comes to actually connecting in, you can't choose what you love. You can only love what you love. And so what happens is some people decide, okay, well, they did the real hard work. They found out what they love to do. But then they end up running into a problem because they start doing what they love to do in a way that somebody else wants them to do it. So a person loves to cook, but they didn't sign up. They don't love working 16-hour shifts as a chef, but their employer does. You dig what I'm saying? So now they're not doing things how they love to do it, which means that someone can dangle over their head the promise that, hey, you're going to get to do what you love to do, but they're not telling you that it's not going to be on your schedule. It's not going to be how you love to do it. It ain't going to be where you love to do it. It ain't going to be for who you love to do it with. And so really, you know what I'm saying? Like it's still people trying to take control over what is true for you. It's the same situation. And what I'm saying is that this is not just about employment or this is not just about business. This is also about relationship, being with the people that you love, doing the things that you love, how you love, when you love, where you love, doing what you love. You understand? This is how we get people onto a level of coordination where to you it feels like you're just doing what you love to do, but to the cosmos it looks like you are a cosmic servant. It looks like you are An angel, somebody who is rippling out and affecting people even without you having to try. Why? Because love acts on behalf of the whole. We are talking about the energy of the totality of reality. You understand? Let me know in the chat if you're understanding what I'm saying. Just put a yes up in there. That love hexagon, we're going to be hearing more about that in the coming weeks because it took me years to get to that place. It took me years to understand what was really going on in terms of love for me. Specifically, the university for me. Let me explain how this goes down. Okay, okay. I see you in the room. Welcome in, welcome in. Hello, may I have a few questions once you're done? Absolutely, absolutely. So let me hit this next part because this is I got to bring this home and talk about the love hexagon because it took so long for me to understand what this was and what how to do any of it. Because my thing is this, and okay, okay, please put your questions in the chat right now. I'm going to see them at some point. How my system is set up, it'll be better if you put them in the chat right now, so that I can get to those. So let me tell you, it's learning to find what you love is itself a triumph. Learning to find what activities you love to do, how you love to spend your day, what your actual life purpose is, the reason that you were placed on the planet for, the people you're supposed to serve. All that is loving. That is a triumph. If you just know one part of the love hexagon, if you just know one part, if you just know the what, oh my God, that's a triumph. But let me tell you what happens after you discover the what. I gotta take this back to my own story. I'm putting the breakthrough board up. Okay. As you know, right now, last week I was telling you that, I retired at 30. And that just sounds crazy, but like that was like a whole there's a lot of story to that, you know what I'm saying? And so one of the benefits is that I had a whole bunch of time to walk around and meditate and think and actually process like what am I on this earth to do? See, I was always raised to think of retirement as an age, right? I thought that if a person lived to be 65, they retired. They were old, they retired. I'm not saying if you're 65 year old, I'm just saying that in my mind, right, 10, 12, 13, 14 years old, I'm thinking, oh, you retire when you're old, when you're 65. Then I started seeing people working at 66, 67, 68 who didn't want to. I was like, oh, I'm starting to think, and it wasn't just one person, it was like most people. If you were still alive, like it was like most people. I was like, okay, I'm starting to think this isn't just an age. I'm starting to think there's a little bit more to this. So then I started thinking that retirement was a number. Like, what's the number? How much money does it take for you to retire? Like, if somebody, you know what I'm saying? Like, to retire today, and you assume that you're going to live to 100, how much money, what's the number that it would take for you to retire today? I started thinking like that. Like, oh, okay, well, yeah, it must be a number then. Because the age deal ain't working. You feel me? But really, by the time I'm getting 22, 23, I'm in scholarship. I'm in the universities. I'm doing my work. I'm doing research projects in East Africa. I'm getting published before I even get into a PhD program. I'm teaching at colleges. Um, Shout out to Harold Washington College, Malcolm X College in Chicago. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm like doing my thing, and I'm really, you know what I'm saying, really looking to live this life of the scholar. And didn't get into grad school at first, so I was just working and teaching at these community colleges. Finally got in some years later to a PhD program, and it just wasn't like what I thought. It was like another rat race. It was like, okay, you're in this place, but like the ideas that people are talking about aren't really that great. Like they're just kind of like, eh, not great. So I wanted to be done with the rat race. I wanted to be done with the academic sort of climb. Typically, how a university works is you get your PhD, you tend to jump out of that at around 30, which was the case for me. And then you start, if you're lucky, you get a tenure track, what's called a tenure track position, which means that you're going to work for about 5 years, building your publications, building your teaching resume, and eventually a university will just say, hey, you're tenured now. You can never be fired, right? That's what tenure is. But I just wanted to be done with all that. I wanted to be done with the rat race. I wanted to be free from always trying to fulfill a lower agenda of someone else. I noticed that other people never had a higher agenda for me. They were never like, oh man, we really want you to go and speak life into people and do that. People were like, listen, we want you to go and satisfy this block of customers that we're going to call students. And we want you to basically go ahead and put in this work for them. Go ahead and go into the classroom. Now, they're not going to care too much about what you're saying, but we need to make this money. You know what I'm saying? It was really like a business. Like I was like, oh man, I thought that I was coming to be among people who had cultivated these higher capacities. And really it was just like this is just like anywhere else. Right? For real, the university was just like it's just like anywhere else. And so I was like, oh, okay, this ain't gonna work for me. At the university, I started noticing that all my students they were rarely anybody who was from my own community from back home. It was always sort of another group of, it was always something else. It was always somebody else. And so I was like, okay, well, what's going on here? And I started seeing that if I live my life in this place and teach in this place, I'll never be able to speak to somebody who was like myself at 13, 14, 15, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, right? These university students. It just would not be the case, particularly if you go to more prestigious universities. You know what I'm saying? Like it was like, but in either in at Ohio University or University of Texas at Austin, it just was not the case. And so I was like, okay, if I'm going to do something special, I'm going to need to like know how to get to that retirement number. So I was like, the only business can do that. You have to start a business or something. You have to do something else because this ain't gonna work, and it's not fulfilling. Yes, I love big ideas and I love grappling with history. I love grappling with persuasion. I like studying. I study persuasion, right? So I like studying how people get people to do things, right? Like that's really. I'm like, oh man, that's really cool because if you can persuade somebody to go to war, could you persuade somebody to love themselves more? Right? These became the kind of questions that I wanted to ask, but they couldn't be answered inside of the university. So it was like, oh, I got to dip. And so I ended up getting into business and I ended up retiring at 30. There's a long story in that, but that's the story for that we had time for tonight. But the point is that I learned pretty soon that retirement when it's a number, that number, you can hit that number, get that number, and it can go away with one lawsuit, one mistake. And so I was like, oh, dang, all this money that you accumulated, that can get caught up in health bills. That can get caught up in a lawsuit. That can get caught up in a lawsuit, something that you didn't even do. It can get extracted, pimping, like it can get taken up out of there, right? And so I was like, oh man, it made me realize that people could still control me through money. Through money. People could still control me. Yes, you saying you retire, but if if my behaviors remain attached to decisions that I can only do if I have a certain amount of money, then my behaviors, by definition, would be constrained by that amount of money. You see what I'm saying? If I'm only willing to go and do what I can, what I perceive as there being enough money to do, or if I'm only willing to live based on this number that I've set for myself, the number that keeps me from experiencing fear, then I would still be controlled by that number, still be controlled by that money. I would be so afraid of losing what I just accumulated. And it's difficult to be free when you're still controlled, when you think that money is the freedom. What's the big lesson, champ? I thought money was the freedom. Remember, I thought we were raised to think that retirement was an age. 65, you cool. Turns out you weren't. Then I thought it was a number thing. I was like, oh no, just as long as you get your favor, you cool, you cool. Then I found out that when it comes to systems of control, that can be taken away. And given that that's the point, I started asking myself, okay, well, how do I get real freedom? I got time. So I said, well, how do I get real freedom? You feel me? Because I don't want to be controlled by a number that can fluctuate. I don't want my purpose to have to get put on hiatus because things ain't looking how I want them to look, or because a mistake happens, or some lawsuit, or whatever the case. So I said, okay. If y'all remember, I think Twin was on that night in December 2022. If y'all remember that night, I was looking out the window like right here, and we were on live, and I was like, "Yo, you know what, y'all? I just lost about 200 grand." December 2022. That was the day that I was like, "Oh, I lost about 200 bands just because of the market fluctuation that year," and it was enough for me to like feel a trigger. Like I was like, "Oh, gee, the freedom that I'm having. What if it's not? What if I can go deeper? If 200 bands is enough to make you be like, oh, well, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm like, what if I can go deeper? What if I can go deeper? What if there's more freedom? I wasn't super stressed out about it for long, but enough for me to be like, you know what I'm saying? Enough for me to have mentioned it on a live. I think I was making a point about something else, but the point is that that was for real, for real. And so it was like, okay, if you lose 200 bands, and at the time my expenses were like 8K a month, you know what I'm saying? So it's not, I wasn't like super, extravagant or anything like that. 8 grand a month, which means that losing 200 bands in a month is kind of like you losing 2 years of expenses or whatever. And so it was like it was enough to trigger me to say, oh man, you know what, I must go deeper now. December 2022, I was like, I plan to get real freedom. But the problem is that no one ever told me how, especially when things don't go the way that I want. Mm. We were taught retirement was an age. Had to discover that it was a had to imagine that it was a number. And now we start getting into territories where it's like, no, it's neither of those things. But who can tell you what it truly is, what it really is? Who? I saw that the only way to secure freedom was to see freedom itself as a decision. The only way to secure freedom was to see freedom itself as a decision. not a circumstance. That's why in spiritual responsibility, I try and show you this every single time. I want you to get an understanding of what this symbol means. We talk about freedom being a decision, it's not a circumstance. If I bend the knee to a situation just because there's not enough capital, what happens when the systems of control cast a tighter noose around my neck? When they try and say, okay, well, we can take all that money that you got away from you, and now you have to stop whatever it is that you think God has placed in your life, whatever purpose you believe God is asking you to fulfill, and you don't fulfill God's purpose, you come fulfill mine. Ah, that's harder to deal with from the perspective of the way that we were raised. However, if I begin to see that freedom itself is a decision, it's not a circumstance. Oh, well, then all of the controls, the bets are off. All of the bets are off. The noose is released because I'm not waiting for somebody else to come through and create a comfortable situation for me. And I'm not worried if someone comes through and takes a comfortable situation away from me. So I started realizing that retirement is a decision. Following purpose is a decision. These are not circumstances. That was the big moment that I started moving past these systems of tight controls that I had been raised with. Just begin to realize that my freedom was in my capacity to abide by this love frequency, to abide by this energy that just has me make decisions, that just has me decide. It just leads me to the decision, no matter what is in the way. But it always moves me to a decision that I can act on right here and right now. If only I had the courage. So that night, I decided I would do what I love or I would die. Simple. It's to the point. I do what I love or I die. There is no, what, I mean, there is nothing else. It is the love is that energy of the totality of reality. There is nothing else. Everything else only looks cool. But in the end, only the love matters. And so it's like, okay, well, why would I waste time with anything else? Lest you become a helat. People who simply did not know any better. There's no shade at them. It's not that they were, there's no shade. People simply, the human condition in that time period, and still, was such that people didn't recognize the power of the energy of the whole. They didn't recognize the power of this, of following this divine frequency, this totality of reality. You could say the natural frequency. You could say their inner voice. You could say following God, following, I don't care how you say it. I make it very simple. I just call it love. People didn't understand the power of that. And so they just went They went along in order to make sure that they were safe and their families were safe. They were afraid. But what I'm telling you tonight is that love and fear cannot coexist because fear operates on behalf of a person, a small, tiny, insignificant individual, and love operates on behalf of the whole. Let me know your understanding. Put a yes in the chat. Let me know your understanding. Sublime, Sublime, what's good? Yes, as a teacher in the good part of town. Okay. Sublime, you were a teacher? Were you a teacher, Sublime? That what I need. I have a Brian Lane. Have a blessed day, everyone. Much love. Brian, have a blessed evening. Much love. Okay, excellent. So Sublime saying, okay, I gotta look in the chat more. Put a yes if you're understanding what I'm saying. And as a matter of fact, okay, Twin saying yes. Okay. Sublime saying you're going in. Yeah, I never know how much to do, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm not trying to have some I never know how much to go, like, you know what I'm saying? Like yeah, I want to bring you the information that's immediate and relevant without going, nerding out and going to places that are just like, yo, okay, hey, bring it back, reel it back, champ. You know what I'm saying? Because I was really like, yo, do I don't know. But again, the thing about the Breakthrough Live about this show is that, like, again, I got a few ideas that are scratched out on some cards or whatever, but like it really is where the spirit moves me. So I always say, like, these Sundays are kind of like my workout session. It's like a place where I'm in the gym right now. Y'all are literally with me shooting in the gym in terms of like how I communicate with spirit in order to bring these ideas forward. And you know, it's it's one of those things where I want to make sure that what I'm saying is clear first of all. Otherwise, I think things can go, you know what I'm saying, a different way. Hey, but check it out. If someone you love needs this message, they were just talking to you about feeling like they were so packed in and confined within their life, send this video to them. Share this video with them right now. The reason is because this moment could change their life. One perspective change can change their life. And so, okay, Twin is saying understanding. He's saying you're going in. Yes, I am. Oh, you're a teacher now, Sublime. Oh, yeah, I'm a high school high. Okay, I'm gonna have to do something with my doc. I can like read like half the uh the message and joint. You know what I'm saying? Okay, I'll take it that you mean you're a high school teacher. Okay, I got you. Excellent, excellent. Wow, wow, wow. Okay. So what subject do you teach? Because I can't. If you put the subject in there, I can't see that just yet. Just type it again so it'll kind of push it up. I did not know that. Wow, 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 wow. Okay. Wow. So you understand, so like you understand. And again, literally I taught 1,000 personal, I had 1,000 students, right? 1,000 college students personal to me. I'm an instructor of record, right? And like so I got a snapshot and the kids would come in from all over the country and I love my students. But like I got a snapshot of what education looked like in Minnesota and what education looked like in California, what education looked like in Hawaii, what education looked like in Germany. You dig what I'm saying? Because it was like you're at a university, so you're getting a lot of these students coming through, and you can kind of see not just how someone performs on a test, but their thinking. You dig what I'm saying? And it's like, one of the things I'm always thinking about is like these K through 12, the K through 12 school system, again, if it's primarily about making sure that people are well behaved, that they understand how to work an 8-hour shift, and that they understand how to do basic math, but they don't like math. They understand how to read, but they don't like reading. You know what I'm saying? It's like you have to give them those types of qualities. You have to make sure they know how to read, but don't like it. I'm always kind of like, man, what's really going on? Like, it started making me think that at like 22, 23, I started teaching at colleges and stuff, universities in Illinois. Northern Illinois University was my first one. And like 22, I was like, yo, what's going on? What's going on? And yeah. So again, what I'm saying is that when we're handling these issues individually, right, we become capable of doing things that transform entire systems. When you refuse to go and do things that you don't love, that means you're going to go and find the opportunities or create the opportunities that you do love, that you are being guided toward. And that very action has a rippling effect that affects other people watching you, people who are being influenced by you, your family, your kids, your children, you understand, your cousins. I want to be able to help you understand the gravity of these situations, because when we can get and understand that we're not just speaking in a vacuum, that spiritual responsibility, that love, that all the things that we're talking about, these concepts that we're talking about, they affect a real world and a real history, thousands of years in the making. And that if you want to avoid a situation where future generations are constantly dealing with these levels of domination and dealing with levels of controlled information, then we're going to need to transform the people who lead those societies and the people who actually abide in those societies. I'm always interested in two things: people's desire to control others and people's ability to be controlled. Those are the two things that I'm like, if we do not evolve humans to a new level, which means we start with ourselves, if we do not follow love, then you'll always fall into one of the two traps: trying to control others or being controlled by others. And often it's, some version of both operating in people's lives. So I share the college story and the retirement story with you just because, what I'm saying, I want you to see what's going on in my life. Okay, so you said yes, I'm a high school English teacher. Oh, cool. English was my favorite subject, and I occasionally do natural science some years. Okay, awesome, awesome. They don't teach comprehension for sure. For sure. That is the biggest thing when I get these university students. I was like, hey man, what's going on? You know what I'm saying? Like, people can memorize, but like to understand, different. That's different. Okay. Okay. Folks, if you have not yet, do take the breakthrough challenge. The breakthrough challenge is, remember at the top of the show, I told you about I invented a field of science called Transcendent Psychology, and I test it in the real world on real people in a game show called Countdown to Breakthrough. This show is a therapeutic game show for you. In other words, what I have is a completely free breakthrough challenge. In that challenge, you'll watch one episode of Countdown to Breakthrough per week. And then I have a mini playbook for you to indulge in. And this playbook has been so instrumental in helping me help you see the through lines through this game show. So you'll be able to sit with actual questions that resonate deeply. And when you actually work through and answer those questions, I believe you'll come to an understanding that you've never seen before in your own life. This is called the Breakthrough Challenge. The link is in the description right now. 6 weeks, 6 episodes. On week 1, you will be breaking generational cycles. By week 6, you will be unbreakable. Take the breakthrough challenge. I really put a lot of work into it. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to get into all that, but like, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, oh, really take the breakthrough challenge, man. It's free. Okay. Y'all hear that? Oh, shoot. I think, hold on. Oh, you know who it is. I hear that doorbell. I hear that doorbell. He thought it was Papa John's, but really, it was Breakthrough Turtle. Breakthrough Turtle in the house. What's good, man? Matter of fact, I think, oh, she's, okay. She's here tonight. Yeah, Sublime is in the chat. See, last week, Break the Turtle came out and admitted he had a crush on Sublime. He a little shy, but he's saying, he's trying to, he's got a message for Sublime. He's saying, hey, okay, all right, she got it. All right, now give me what you got for us. All right, give me what you got, because April gonna find out about this. Plus, I think Sublime is married, man. Stop all that. Okay, so here we go. Break the Turtle says, you're in love when you can't fall asleep because reality is finally better than your dreams. Dr. Seuss. You're in love when you can't fall asleep because reality is finally better than your dreams. Ah, Dr. Seuss. That's some that's some profound words right there. If you ever wanted to know, you're in love when you can't fall asleep because reality is finally better than your dreams. And don't you find that to be the case? What if we were able to coordinate humanity onto this new standard, this new love standard, wherein we're no longer looking to control and dominate other people in order to assuage our own internal fears, but rather we can enter into a higher field of coordination with other people, understanding that our stories, our civilizations, our connections are one. If humanity is going to reach a new higher tier of civilization, we're going to need to have a new form of coordination, a higher form of coordination. Because when you have wars, like people don't like preserve people's ideas, they destroy it. So humanity is constantly in a position of always having to start over again. Ideas that are breakthroughs today were formerly known and were common. Inventions that were near completion centuries ago are just now getting underway. You dig what I'm saying? It's like we're always going 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. What we need is a higher form of coordination. And only something that is incorruptible, only something that is in alignment with clear seeing will suffice as our foundation. You can call it any name you want. I call it love. You would need that. And so when it comes to Dr. Seuss's quote here, you're in love when you can't fall asleep because reality is finally better than your dreams. Like, what if that was the message to empires? That what you get when you understand what's happening here is greater than what you get by conquering someone today and then having to constantly look over your shoulder at what they're doing tonight. This understanding is something that we would have to, it's not something that you can force on people, but that doesn't mean that you can't create the conditions necessary for helping people discover what was once hidden. And so it sounds like this is really a value proposition to empires, that that love is better than your dreams, including your dreams of being the only authority. Yeah. Yeah. Sublime saying wars are so archaic. Oh, Sublime saying beautiful. She put the hearts in there for you. Try to break the turtle. She put the hearts in there for you. I ain't gonna say nothing else though. Uh, okay, okay. Tobias, or when I see you saying three AI atlas in this world, okay, you would think we would be smarter than this by now. Like what I'm noticing, this is the other thing. I'll say this and then I'll move on. You know, what I'm saying is this. I don't think this is an IQ issue. Like I will say this. One of the biggest lessons that I learned in grad school, particularly the PhD, is I'm sitting around the room and I'm watching people with, you know, who do well on the IQ test, and I'm watching how it wasn't the problem wasn't how logical their arguments were. The problem was their perspective in the first place. Like the way that they saw the world in the first place. It's not an IQ problem, it's a consciousness problem. It's an awareness issue. It would be like it's really like the difference between like if you ever met like really smart people who went to jail, um and like they're devising all kinds of like, ingenious ways to communicate with other people and share messages and all this other stuff. It's like okay, this person is really brilliant, but because of the very way that they looked at the world, they misused their intelligence. It's a misuse of intelligence situation. That's what I think we're more dealing with. It's a misuse of intelligence, a misappropriation of logic. We're applying logic to the wrong perspectives. We're spending too much time on the wrong perspectives, right? Because people are afraid, and so they look to control others, and so they force feed them the perspective they want through what institutions? The school, religion, and that media. This isn't new. This has been going on. But I'm saying that if your leaders are not controlling, do not have access to this higher way of looking, this higher way of seeing, ain't no way you about to get access to a higher way of thinking. I don't think it's an IQ situation. I think we get too misguided by the IQ deal, as if we assume that a person's ability to reason well means that they're reasoning well about the right things. It's a mistake. Also, IQ tests are also too. I mean, I don't even want to go into it, but you know what I'm saying. Like, but the idea is that that is a fundamental mistake, that we believe that a person who knows how to reason well is reasoning is thinking about the right things in the first place to be reasoning about, right? To be working through or solving the right problems from the right perspective, from the right angle. Say what you want about Jeff Bezos, but he gave me a quote I'll never forget. He said perspective is worth 80 IQ points. That just by changing your perspective, you have to think less hard. You don't have to think as you don't have to think as much. Just by changing your perspective, you can see in a way that others cannot. It would be like, IQ being like a fast car. Like just because you have a fast car don't mean you driving in the right direction. You know, like yeah, you can have a bicycle and still get to a destination sooner if you know where you're going. If you have the right perspective, the right direction. But you got the fastest car in the world going in the wrong direction, you're never about to get to your destination. You dig what I'm saying? And if our destination is a higher form of civilization, then we have to set the appropriate direction. And I'm saying that direction is love. You understand? That's what I'm saying. You said, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what I'm saying. All right. Okay. Let me go ahead and hit this next piece because I think that sometimes we want to get into a live call and we can definitely do that. If you like to be on live, we can open up the calls. If you like to be on live, put 111 in the chat and we can get you on live to the breakthrough live. Put 111 in the chat and we'll bring you on live to the breakthrough live. In the meantime, I want to show y'all one thing. Let's see if I can get there. Check this out. Watch this.
Fear. I'm not in this world to live up to your expectations. I'm here to live up to mine.
He who is not courageous enough to take risks will accomplish nothing in life.
Fear is a teacher.
And I don't skip class.
What do you both think about fear?
I'm not in this world to live up to your expectations. I'm here to live up to mine.
Okay. So this AI little craze, man, sure is making some great content. I mean, it's making some real cool quotes. Like, so we got Bruce Lee. This is like one of my, what I'm saying, untold hours spent from the age of 5 to 8 years old watching Bruce Lee movies, and of course, learning about Ali later in life. It's like, oh man, these truly great individuals, right? And so Bruce Lee says, what do you think about fear? He says, I'm not here to live up to your expectations. I'm here to live up to mine. And so, what if we take that same perspective into our relationships with spouses, with kids, with every relationships? Bring that perspective. I'm not here to live up to your expectations. I'm not here to do what you would prefer for me to do. I'm here to serve God. And again, God being that totality of reality. I'm here to serve love. Period. I'm not here for whatever it is you talking about, whatever systems of control you want to put. You can say this on a macro scale, and you can also say it on a micro scale, just your individual relationships or your relationship with the greater world around you. But either way, to me, when you're making a commitment to love, you're making a commitment to the whole. That even the person who wants to control you, be it a spouse or somebody who, an ex, whatever the case, operating in love, you serve them anyway. Not because you're trying to, not because you're actively thinking and planning and plotting on it, but because what you do ends up influencing and affecting what they see. Love will ask you to go against the grain at times. It'll ask you to do things that other people wouldn't expect you to do. But when you do them anyway, but when you do them anyway, the same folks who are just trying to control you now see a portal. You become a doorway for them, something that allows them to see that there is another possibility, another way of moving through the world. Whereas people thought that they had to fill their day up with so many of the things they thought they should do. But in fact, all those shoulds were just taking up more of love's attention. All of those shoulds were just crowding out God's will. So you can't have it both ways. You can't fill up your day with a whole bunch of things you think you should do, but hate, and fill up your day with a whole bunch of things that you love to do. There's just not enough time in the day for both of those. You have to pick one. You can only serve one master. You can serve the master of control and obligation from others and to others, or you can serve the master that supersedes all others. You can serve the master that is love. You understand? This is the deal. This is the deal. Because I'm not here to live up to your expectations. So, yeah, I think this is AI. Sublime saying, is that AI? I think yes. I'm gonna say yes because I don't know of these two to ever have been on an interview before. So I'm calling AI on it. Plus, it kind of has that AI look to it. You feel me? It kind of has that AI look to it. Oh, okay. Oh, there's one more thing. My bad. Because again, this is not just about, I spent a lot of time talking about society, writ large. But what I'm hoping you do is understand the through line. You dig? I'm hoping you understand the through line. And so let me show you this other piece here before we wrap.
Pressure emotion. A lot of people think that it's gone, that they dealt with it. Like that's the craziest thing when people be like, "Oh, I dealt with it. How you deal with it? I just moved on from it."
Yeah.
It's like, no, you didn't. But then
research.
yeah, if you took a beach ball to the beach and you're in the ocean and you got your two hands on top of this ball and you're pushing it under the ocean, like you suppressed it. Like it's no longer on the surface anymore.
Right.
But eventually, when you get tired, when you move your hands, what's the beach ball gonna do? It's gonna pop right out of the water.
Okay.
And that's how it is. What I saw from you, it's like, yeah, for those 2 years, I held that beach ball down under that water. Like you ain't see what I was going through. Nobody ain't see the pain or the hurt that I was dealing with. But eventually, I got tired, and I had to remove my hands.
Right.
And now you're gonna have to deal with everything that I suppressed for those 2 years is now gonna come back to the surface.
Okay. So
When do you feel the most protected and cared for?
Hold on.
When you just sit there and listen to me. I have always been able to come to you and let you know what I'm going through and just be extremely transparent. And you never judge me. You never look at me as being weak.
Okay. All right. I like that. I hadn't seen that clip before. Let me respond to the first one. That first clip, when he's talking about that beach ball, he's talking about holding it down and holding it down until there's so much pressure that it just. He's saying that a beach ball is an analog to his suppressed feelings. That in both cases, he's trying to hold him down underneath this liquid tension, underneath the surface, so that he doesn't have to deal with them. But why is he doing that? Why is he doing that? All to admit in the end that eventually that beach ball has to come back up. And he's got to deal with the repercussion of that. That the very act of holding the emotions under the surface, the beach ball under the surface, drains his own energy. Are y'all seeing the parallel? That he's talking about in a relationship. I'm saying that whether we're talking about in a relationship or whether we're talking about macro society, that's exactly what the Spartans were doing. They're working so hard to keep their society under control, which is to say they're working so hard to keep their own fear under control by manipulating other people in the society, that eventually the very act of trying to accomplish that goal strained their civilization until it collapsed. You do that same thing in an individual relationship and you strain your body system, your psychoneurological ecosystem until you collapse. There's got to be another way. What did we learn today? We learned that the principle is that love cannot be controlled because love is the energy of the whole. And then we click and now we see that dude, just that little click that I didn't see coming. He's saying, listen, she says, well, when do you feel best? He says, well, when you're just there for me, right? When I get that attention. Ah, okay. You mean when you're restored back to that loving wholeness? When somebody can hold a mirror up of what love looks like and you can see it and you can feel it. Now you're back. Oh, I see. That's why we go back to that principle. Love cannot be controlled because love is the energy of the whole. That all control is based on conditioning your thinking, splitting it into little chunks, cutting up the whole totality of reality and cutting it into parts, and then turning those parts against each other. But we learned that the path forward was to act from that unconditional energy of the whole. We learned that that path forward was to act from that unconditional energy of the whole. And so, folks, okay, Twin is saying, yes, AI, yes, it is. Yeah, how many can relate? Absolutely. Absolutely. So, folks, we have to get to this place. We have to go to this place where we can touch that energy of the whole. We've got to actually go there. We can't just talk about it. We can't just, say whatever, you know what I'm saying? We got to actually go there. And so that's what we're going to do tonight. Remember that when I talk about love, I'm really talking about consciousness. I'm talking about that which unites all phenomenal activity, all things, all events, talking about awareness itself, which is why I don't like to move beyond step one of dealing with supreme awareness. Because in that supreme awareness, we can collapse the distinctions made by binary opposition, by that mental phenomenon that's called binary opposition. We can collapse that distinction and actually find ourselves immersed in this totalizing experience. But we can only do that by accessing the substance that is common to all experiences across any reality. That place where mind and matter meet. And that place is always in awareness. And so tonight, that is where we're going. By the way, before we jump into our conscious transformation technology, our kit for the evening, the kits are the tools that we use in transcendent psychology in order that we return to spiritual responsibility, in order that we return to love. Before we get to that, one thing I want to say is if you're watching this alone, bring someone with you next week, because that's how we expand this understanding. That's how we get to this place where people are no longer concerned about is someone going to have control over their life. Now they can merely tune back in to the divine frequency of ages, tune back into love. And so right now, take one deep breath with me. Inhale. Exhale. Because everything that we want is already in awareness. Just right now, become aware of the tip of your nose and simply observe the air, the oxygen flowing into your nostrils on the inhale. And notice the sensation you get in your nose on the exhale. Right now, see if you can become aware of awareness itself. If you try to look for awareness, you will fail. So instead, simply ask yourself the question, am I aware? See that the answer is always yes. Notice that this awareness is aware of the tip of your nose, but it is also aware of the space in front of your nose. Notice now that you can be both aware of your body and aware of the space around your body at the same time. You can feel your hands and you are aware of the space around your hands. In fact, you are aware of the space that fills the room you are in. Notice that to awareness, your body and the space around your body share the same reality. Which means that to awareness, your body and the space around your body are one. How far out in space can you feel right now? There is no need to strain. Simply notice you are seeing that your body and the space around your body appear in awareness. But if awareness disappeared, your body and the space around your body could no longer be experienced. They would disappear with awareness. Which means that awareness is the primary experience of reality. All of reality appears in awareness. All of reality appears in you. Which means you and reality are one. Rest in this. If you rest in this for long enough, love will find you. Indeed, it already has. When you're ready, you may open your eyes and return. Folks, if you did that exercise, then that's all that's required in order to bring yourself as often as you need back into that felt experience of oneness. Like any skill, I recommend actually coming back and doing that exercise throughout this week. I recommend using that kit throughout this week because doing that enough, you begin to feel what I mean when I say the word love. And so, on that note, I just want you to know that if fear is our only enemy, Then we bring heaven to earth when we transform our minds. I'm Dr. Shawn, and we were not sent to impress our people. We were sent to transform our people into a light for the world. For God's universe opens to all who believe in breakthrough.